Will you join me in prayer? Great Spirit God, we come seeking your presence, for we need it now as we have needed in the past. And we ask that you bless us with your sense of goodness, sense of perspective, a truly wide open sea of compassion. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of each heart here be pleasing to you, O God, our rock and our salvation. Amen. When I asked Sally a few weeks back how much time I would have for a sermon this morning, she gave me this signal. And I worked really hard, but it's about what it usually runs. So in advance, I apologize for that, but I hope you will listen as prayerfully and openly and with as much forgiveness as you have in the past. My fascination with Moses began at a young age in ministry. I chose the story of Moses and the burning bush as my ordination scriptural passage. Now, that may have really been presumptuous on my part, but I really did not liken myself to Moses, except to say that I had a speech impediment, and so did he. And I was a bit slow to get it, and sometimes so was he. And I was totally taken by the call to ministry and leadership in the community of faith, and so was he. Actually, I was quite overwhelmed that I could possibly be called to ministry with all of my flaws and shortcomings. It was only several years later that I was able to affirm that for Moses as well as for me, God called us because of and in spite of the me we are. So when the call to ministry came knocking again well over 2 years ago, I wasn't quite ready for the wild ride it would turn out to be. Moses had his encounter with God through the burning bush. I had my visit with your conference minister, who prevailed on me to take you seriously even when I had turned you down once. He said, "Those leadership folk at Manhattan Beach really want you." And all I could think was, what in the world do I ever know about doing ministry with a bunch of folks in Manhattan Beach? Well, in a way, you and this experience with you became my burning bush. Through doing ministry with you, I learned that ministry is ministry is ministry. And the church is the church is the church. After being here for a little while, I was beginning to feel more like a healthy minister again, after the demoralizing way my last ministry ended. Moses had his past, murder in the desert, and I had mine. I learned from you that again I could use my past to help a congregation to knock at the door of its future. Moses had his murmurers, those folks who kept saying to him about his leadership, "Why did you bring us all the way out here to die? In Egypt, at least we had food to eat and a roof over our heads." And he kept saying to them, "Well, come on, the promised land is just right over here." I had a bunch of my own murmurers right here in Beach City. The story of many of you told the story of your Egypt. We are too enamored with our past and don't bother us with a vision of our future. At least in our past, we didn't really have to make any tough decisions. At least we were all happy and satisfied. And what happened to John? And I kept saying to you, you have a wonderful set of core values. You have a well-crafted mission statement. You have a plan and goals for the future, your future. And oh, by the way, the future is this way. So without you even knowing what you were doing and that you were doing it, you were helping me relearn and reaffirm and rehear the truth of the biblical adage, without vision, the people perish. Vision is so extremely important to the health, well-being, and survivability of a community of faith. And it is no more important than it is today. When I first started preaching in your high and lofty pulpit, way over you, isolated from the middle of the community, it felt very, very strange. Then when I learned it again and again, how foreign my preaching sounded as it fell on your unaccustomed ears, I knew how very strange it was. It was more than just the simple fact that I, like Moses, had a thick tongue. It was that I was a biblical preacher who followed the lectionary from a progressive perspective. Many of you were so far in grief that to you it was really shocking, really far out. It certainly wasn't the church of the quiet faith. And to some of you who told me so, it was like I was leading you down the road to Pentecostalism. So look out, holy rollers, here we come. And then, when I came out of the ivory tower of a pulpit and stood down in your midst and roamed the aisle and even sang to you on occasion, that almost caused some here to blow a gasket. Well, Moses had his golden calf, and I had my high fortress of a mighty pulpit. I learned from you that I had matured to the point that I wasn't frightened of the trial by tongue lashing and verbal chastisement and complaints. That I really was comfortable in my own skin. And that gave me confidence to go my own way, knowing that I got to be me. And as a matter of fact, that is part of what my call here was all about. And if you didn't like it, I would and did just tell you to show me the door. So you strengthened my resolve, and you furthered my self-understanding. And in the process, you deepened and strengthened this community faith, and you fell in love with a new way of doing church. And that way, by the way, is still unfolding. Moses believed he could find some sanity in the middle of his community of faith if he could just get there. That God would be more clearly and truly revealed at the core of the wandering children of Israel. As a matter of fact, that would be the only revelation that would make any sense to anyone, Moses, God, or the errant children. I believed and still believe so strongly in the congregational way that I am sometimes foolhardy enough to believe the wisdom and faith and hope is most clearly found when the congregation is brought in to surround an issue. But the playing field has got to be level. Everyone has to have equal access to the core. So as I worked with you, I believed that the best leaders would be called out of the midst of your community. And the best discernment, almost the only quality discernment, would be done by the whole community of faith, struggling with thinking and praying together through an issue to the other side. We did that here, most remarkably during the cottage meetings that many of you thought would never work. Where did he get that god-awful idea? But also during other times as well. And I can discern, because you have first discerned, that God is more alive and more vitally present here now than for a long, long time. I learned that from you. I believe that in order for the depth and vitality of faith to grow in this congregation, we needed to practice the sacrament of Holy Communion and the sacrament of baptism on a regular basis right here in the center of this community. We have done that to the point that more and more of you are finding new meaning in the Lord's table. And many of you are deeply touched by the fount of blessing in sacrament. Moses had his manna from heaven. I have had the big, wide table and the deep font. By your practice, you have taught me that. And now, old Moses and I will share one more aspect of ministry together. Moses died before he was able to move into the promised land with the children of Israel. Regardless of what some of you think, I do not believe I am dying now any more than I was earlier this morning. But the light of my influence and presence is fading more and more the closer we get to July 16th. Neither Moses nor I, because it becomes a matter of demonstrating the importance of principle, and keeping integrity is shining reality, will get any more than a sketchy glimpse of what our communities of faith will look like when they claim the future. Now, there are so many other ways in which you have taught this old dog new tricks. Thank you for all the ways I have learned from you. I am, among all humankind this morning, richly blessed. It is a great day to be alive. Thanks be to God. Amen.